India and Nepal problem. Neighbors are always important for any country in its foreign policy. More neighbors a country has, more is the likelihood of variety of issues and problems that are arising. The issues and problems range from border dispute, terrorist infiltration, smuggling goods and narcotic drugs to illegal immigration problems. Therefore, there are plenty of problems, and India seems to have its fair share of such neighborly problems and issues. It is because it is surrounded by many neighbors, and Nepal is not just another neighbor of India, but it is symbolically linked to it by close cultural affinity, overlapping ethnic and linguistic identities, and an open border permitting passage without documentation or even registration, and which is an unusual arrangement. The India-Nepal relationship, therefore, is deeper than between any two European Union countries. Indeed, ever since the 1951 Chinese annexation of the Tibet, which eliminated the outer buffer between India and China, Nepal has become a main inner buffer for India, and political turmoil in Nepal therefore directly impinges on Indian security when it occurs in Nepal. Now let us see what is the current Nepal's problems. Nepal's current political and constitutional crisis has engendered violent protests and serious shortages of fuel and other essential goods, as it was reported widely in the media. It is just the latest chapter in a flawed democratic experiment in Nepal that is taking place since 1990. The experiment has yielded mostly political disturbances. Once again, a decade-long Maoist insurgency has resurfaced, and it has facilitated the ouster of the country's monarchy. Further, it has also deepened the country's ethnic problems. Worse, it has led to the empowerment of communists. By fostering unending turmoil, the weak democratic transition that has taken place has made Nepal what political scientists say a playground for powers, and unfortunately they are hostile to India. Still, Nepali nationalism usually takes the form of India baiting. In this sense, India is again at the center of a blame game by Nepalese nationalists, and many of them are communist. It includes ex-guerrillas, and the Prime Minister Khadga Prasad Oli's name is mentioned in this context, and there is a ultra-nationalism and communism which tend to be two sides of the same coin. And such situation is apparent from several ex-communist countries and China. What is the latest crisis arising out of this overall background? Nepal's latest crisis is linked to a new constitution that was forced with the controversial provisions. These provisions left the Terai Plains people in Nepal politically vulnerable. Now, the ex-Prime Minister Oli's communist-dominated government was appointed in October, and it only fueled the crisis that there is a hardline policy that has emerged. The Prime Minister Oli made India the scapegoat, and Nepal has been accusing it of unofficially the blockading of essential supplies to landlocked Nepal. Anyone visiting the Burgunj-Raxul border, through which much of the trade flows, can see that the blockade is by the ethnic Madheshi protest groups. India is mediating between the two sides, and the Prime Minister Oli has now grudgingly offered to accommodate some of the Terai people's demands. And it includes 2 constitutional amendments. But the Madheshi groups have rejected his offer as inadequate. If the crisis drags on, there will be a failed constitution, and it will compound Nepalese political problems. Now, in this context, what should be India's strategy? According to political observers, India is yet to frame a credible long-term strategy to deal with this problem, and it includes Nepal serving as a gateway for China and Pakistan. This will undermine Indian security. Therefore, Nepal also has become a conduit for the flow of illicit norms, narcotics, counterfeit currency to India. Nepal, instead of cracking down on such activity with Indian assistance, has objected to India's increasing the deployment of Sahastra Seema Bal, which is a police force that patrols Nepal and Bhutan borders. Nepal has encouraged an intimidation-filled environment. It concedes the strategic space to outside powers like China and the United Nations. It is observed that because of this, in 2008, the election process, the Maoists came to power. In this context, an important fact that is to be noted is, despite Nepal's critical importance to India, Prime Minister in August 2014 visited for the first time. And it was the first time by any Indian Prime Minister to that country in the last 17 years. And it came after China had strategically already penetrated the Nepal. To his credit, Prime Minister has sought to diplomatically recoup India's losses over the years in its strategic planning. Prime Minister indeed visited Nepal a second time again in 2014 to participate in the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, that is SAARC summit. Therefore, the two visits have created a sort of a groundswell for the Nepalese goodwill for India. The powerful communist parties, however, have reignited the Nepalese suspicion about India's agenda in this context. Now, in this context, what more India should do and could have done? Today, with an Indian-friendly government in Kathmandu, India will have to compete with China. That is for creating influence in Nepal. Beijing, that is China, wields an increasing influence in Nepal. Chinese leaders like Mao Zedong once described Nepal as one of the fingers of the Tibetan palm, the other fingers being Bhutan, Sikkim, Kashmir and Arunachal Pradesh. This simile indicates how China views its territorial ambitions in the times to come. Now, China has already tightened its grips over the palm, that is Tibet. Therefore, it is now exerting pressure on India through each of these fingers. This is how the political observers feel the situation. Nepal has a porous, more than 1,700 kilometer borders with India. And this has become a boon for Pakistani and Chinese intelligence. India has been slow to institute a stricter border regime to choke illicit activities and halt entry of arms, plastic explosives, opiates, fake currency and other subversive elements across the border. All nations respect and hold in awe their neighbor that has a power, strength and determination. A weak, big neighbor comes in handy to a smaller state for blaming the country for anything real or imagined. This appears to be happening against India by Nepal. This is what Nepal is doing to India. Nepal has awarded China $1.6 billion project, a dam project, and it is the single biggest foreign investment in Nepal. But at the same time, it has failed to revive long-stalled joint energy projects with India. Foreign affairs observers note that if India cannot manage a country that is closely tied to it like Nepal, how can it effectively deal with adversarial China and Pakistan?